Have you ever smiled so hard your cheeks hurt, just to hide the silence rotting inside your chest? You show up, you give, you play the role so perfectly they don't even question it. Meanwhile, behind your eyes, a storm's been screaming for someone, anyone, to just notice you're drowning. Not because you failed, but because you gave everything, and somehow it still wasn't enough. You become the ghost in the room full of noise. Your laughter, background music. Your pain, invisible ink. No one sees the cracks unless you bleed in front of them, and even then, they call it drama. This is how it begins. Not with begging on your knees, but with subtle self-destruction. You explain yourself too much. You lower your standards. You stay longer than your spirit can survive. And every time you forgive what broke you, you lose another piece of yourself. You begged, not in words, but in silence, in staying, in sacrificing your damn soul, just to feel wanted. You took pride in your loyalty, but what did it cost you? Nights where your heart shattered silently while they slept peacefully. Mornings where you swallowed your hurt and wore a smile like armor. That's not love. That's emotional servitude. That's how warriors are turned into shadows. Epictetus didn't preach for comfort. He roared for freedom. Never depend on the admiration of others. There is no strength in it. He knew the weight of invisible chains, the kind that don't clink but choke, and yet we still chase them, clutching to shallow praise, temporary attention, lukewarm affection that vanishes the moment we need it most. That's not connection. That's imprisonment dressed in soft words. The Stoics didn't flinch at rejection. They stood alone and smiled because they knew what's real never needs to be begged for, and what needs to be earned through suffering was never love. It was power play. This video isn't a self-help balm. It's a damn purge. If you've ever stared at a screen, praying for a message that never came. If you've ever edited your soul just to be tolerated. If you've ever been scared that speaking up would drive them away, listen carefully. You were not crazy. You were just surrounded by people too blind to recognize gold while asking you to act like tin. This ends today, not with revenge, but with revelation. We're not here to heal gently. We're here to burn the weakness out of your bones and build something unbreakable from the ashes. What's coming next isn't advice. It's a weapon. 5 Stoic principles, sharpened by centuries of suffering and solitude, brutal enough to crack your illusions wide open. These are not feel-good quotes. These are truths that will split your chest open and leave nothing but the real you standing. You'll learn how to stop begging, how to stop bleeding for people who never learned how to hold anything sacred. These truths don't come with comfort. They come with clarity. And that clarity, it will set your entire mindset on fire. You don't get to skip this. You've skipped yourself enough already. Every second of this video is designed to tear down the prison you built just to feel loved. So if your heart's pounding right now, good. That means the real you is waking up. Like, share, subscribe. Let this message haunt every corner of your mind until it becomes your new standard. Until you no longer bend for basic respect. Until your silence becomes power, not punishment. Write it, etch it in stone, bleed it into the comments below. I will never beg again for what I deserve, because from this moment on, you don't chase, you don't explain, you don't beg, you rebuild. Now let's get into it. Number 1. Stop explaining yourself to be understood. There comes a moment when your voice turns into a weapon, but not for them, for you, because the more you try to explain yourself to someone who's already made up their mind, the more you tear yourself apart from the inside. It's like carving open your chest just to prove you have a heart, while they stare at your wounds like it's entertainment. You speak and they blink. You cry and they yawn. You break and they call you dramatic. And still, you explain, hoping, bleeding, drowning in the silence of someone who never intended to understand you in the first place. Do you understand the madness of that? You're out here handing your pain like scripture, sacred and raw, to people who treat it like graffiti. You're throwing lifelines to those who watch you sink with a smile. You keep justifying your hurt, mapping out your soul like a crime scene, begging someone to notice the blood on the walls. But they don't see it. Not because it's invisible, because they're blind by choice. Their comfort depends on your silence. Their power feeds on your confusion. And every time you speak, every time you plead, you don't get closer to being understood. You just dig a deeper grave for your self-worth. Seneca didn't write those ancient words for nothing. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Now flip that. You're not poor in strength. You're poor in boundaries, in emotional discipline, in the refusal to stop giving to the void. When you crave to be understood by someone who can barely understand themselves, you bankrupt your own spirit. That's not love. That's a slow-motion execution of your peace. And you're the one pulling the trigger because you believe there's still hope in a place that's already buried your voice. Real respect doesn't need subtitles. Real care doesn't wait for a breakdown. When someone sees you, they don't need a damn monologue to feel what's happening in your soul. They catch it in your silence. They sense it in your distance. They hear the volume in your absence. But if they don't, let that be your closure. Stop explaining. Stop pleading for clarity from people who benefit from your confusion. You are not a court case. You are not evidence. You are not on trial for feeling too much. Walk the hell out. Because there's a level of silence that screams louder than anything you could ever say. And when you embrace that silence, not as weakness, but as revenge, you start reclaiming the pieces of yourself you gave away for free. Your presence becomes a storm. Your absence becomes a punishment. And those who ignored your voice, they will hear your silence like thunder rolling through a church of guilt. That's not bitterness. That's resurrection. That's power being rebuilt in the shadows. So if they didn't hear your pain when you handed it to them wrapped in tears, make sure they feel your absence like a damn earthquake. You don't need to scream to be respected. You don't need to repeat yourself to be real. Walk out. Go silent. Let your peace haunt them. Let your name echo in the emptiness they created. And when your power returns, unapologetic, unshaken, they'll realize you were the storm they thought they could silence. But storms don't explain themselves. They destroy, rebuild, and rise. Number 2, stop chasing people who make you feel unworthy. There comes a moment where the mirror turns savage, where you see your own reflection, and it spits the truth back at you like poison. You're chasing someone who looks at you like a background character in their story, not because you're not worthy, but because you let them treat you like a backup plan with a heartbeat. And every step you take toward them, every message you send, every second you spend overthinking their silence, you drag your own worth through the dirt like it's nothing but spare change. You're not in love, you're in withdrawal. Withdrawal from the high they gave you when they pretended to see you. You're not chasing them, you're chasing that hit, that first dose of affection they weaponized to make you stay. But now they breadcrumb you, ignore you, reduce your soul to a side note, and you still show up like it's your job to convince them you matter. And that's not love. That's self-destruction, disguised as loyalty. They pull away, and you chase. They disrespect you, and you try harder. You keep tossing lifelines to someone who's already swimming away with a smirk, knowing damn well you'll dive after them again. And each time you do, you shrink. You lose pieces of your voice, your power, your fire. Until one day you look in the mirror and don't even recognize the version of you who used to be strong. Stoicism doesn't whisper in moments like this. It screams. Marcus Aurelius didn't write for the weak-hearted. He wrote for the warrior within you, the part that remembers silence is stronger than begging, that walking away is louder than pleading, that your soul isn't built for sale. He said, "Only what you do matters." And you? You've done enough. You've given enough. You've bled enough for someone who wouldn't even flinch if you vanished tomorrow. They won't change. Not for you. Not for anyone. Because the more you chase, the more they confirm the lie they've started to believe, that they're above you. And in some sick way, you trained them to think that. You taught them that your heart is available for punishment, that your love is elastic. You'll stretch yourself until you snap, and they'll still call you too much. But that's the curse of chasing ghosts. They don't owe you closure, they don't hear your cries, and they don't care that you're bleeding from wounds they never intended to heal. They don't even see it, because they've stopped looking. And the tragedy? You're not even chasing them anymore. You're chasing the version of them that existed only in the beginning. The addicting lie they fed you to keep you hooked. That version died the second they realized you'd settle for less just to stay close. You're not in love, you're in grief. Grieving the version of them that felt real. Grieving the version of you who once had standards. But here's where it ends. Right now. Because you don't belong crawling towards someone who steps over your soul like it's decoration. You're not designed to beg. You're not a second chance. You're not a maybe. You're the storm they weren't built to survive. Let them feel your absence like a cold war. Let your silence punch harder than every word you ever screamed. Walk like you forgot their name. Heal like they never existed. You don't need revenge. You need resurrection. And that begins when you stop chasing the person who broke you and start becoming the version of yourself they could never reach. You don't need them. You needed the reminder. And now that you've seen the truth, burn the bridge. Light it up with everything you never said. Let the ashes whisper your name, because when you stop chasing, you stop bleeding and start becoming unforgettable. Number 3, respect yourself enough to walk away without closure. Eyes locked on the screen, pulse ticking like a funeral drum, waiting for a message that will never arrive. Not because they're too busy, not because they forgot, but because they want you to suffer in that silence. That's the game. No apology, no explanation, just mental warfare masters indifference. And you feed it by refreshing, rereading, replaying conversations like they hold hidden clues to a question they already answered in the worst way possible, by leaving without looking back. You're not seeking closure, you're begging for a wound to bleed politely. And the moment you start needing someone to explain why they hurt you, you've already handed them the sharpest blade and asked them to twist it. People who care don't evaporate into silence when your heart's on fire. They show up, they speak, they soften the blow, even if they're leaving. But ghosts don't need words. Their absence is the knife, and you, still clinging to hope, keep reopening the wound, praying the same person who broke you will be the one to stitch you back together. That's not love, that's psychological carnage. And still, your mind keeps replaying it all, digging through the ruins, like closure is some grand reveal waiting behind the final text. But closure doesn't live in their mouth. It lives in your decision to stop waiting. Epictetus didn't write about waiting for others to act right. He burned truth into stone. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And if that reaction is silence, good. Let it be silence laced with venom. Let it echo like a war cry in a dead room. You want to heal? Then stop begging for kindness from someone who showed you how easy it was to destroy you. Respect doesn't come wrapped in apologies. It comes when you stop bleeding at the feet of the person who swung the sword. You already know who they are. You felt it when they left. You felt it when they blamed you for their emotional cowardice. You felt it in the pit of your stomach when you stared at a blank screen and they didn't even flinch. That was your closure. That pain was the full confession. They don't need to speak. You already have the truth. Now act like it. Don't chase, don't ask, don't beg. Walk, head high, soul scarred but not broken. Let your silence scorch every memory. Let your peace roar louder than their excuses. And when they finally notice your absence, when the silence becomes too loud to ignore, let them sit with the ghost of you they tried to bury. You owe them no reply, but you owe yourself revenge through peace. Walk away. No words, no tears, just the echo of your worth slamming the door shut behind you. Number 4. Love without losing yourself. Love is supposed to cradle you, not cage you. But when the line blurs, when love morphs from sanctuary into self-erasure, that's when the nightmare begins. At first, it's subtle, a yes here, an apology for things you didn't even do wrong there. You start folding yourself smaller, dimming your light, rearranging your soul's furniture just to make space for someone else. Day by day, you lose pieces of yourself, your voice muffled, your dreams silenced, until one morning, staring back in the mirror, you barely recognize the ghost wearing your skin. You're alive, breathing, but inside, your spirit has been siphoned dry. That's not love. That's emotional corrosion, a slow decay that eats through your bones until all that's left is a hollow shell begging for scraps of approval. Shrinking for love doesn't build bridges, it burns them down. And worst of all, the person you're shrinking for rarely sees what's happening. They take. Because the more you give without boundaries, the easier you become to overlook. You're the invisible safety net, stretched so thin it's ready to snap. People always reach for the version of you that demands the least, that submits quietly to being lesser. It's a poison masquerading as affection, and once it seeps into your veins, it's a hellish prison with no bars. Just the heavy chains of self-betrayal you willingly wrapped around your own wrists. Marcus Aurelius didn't mince words when he said, "To love only what happens, what was destined." No greater harmony. That harmony starts with loving yourself, even when it hurts. Loving yourself through loss, through the cold sting of realizing you gave your entire ocean to someone who barely managed a puddle. Real love doesn't force you to trade your dignity for a few moments of warmth. It doesn't demand silence from your soul. It amplifies your voice like thunder in a storm. When love costs your peace, steals your sleep, crushes your joy, and erodes your values, what you're holding isn't love. It's emotional debt, a slow drowning in compromises. Every little sacrifice pulls you deeper until your laughter fades, your heart tightens at their presence, and your efforts feel like wading through quicksand. You were never meant to be someone's emotional sponge, soaking up their damage while disappearing into the background. You have the right, no, the duty, to love fiercely without losing yourself. If someone demands you erase your essence to keep them close, they never loved you. They only craved the pieces you gave away. So stop handing them over like currency for a counterfeit affection. Choose you, The fierce, untamed version who smiles like a wild flame, sleeps wrapped in peace, dreams loud enough to shake mountains, and speaks with a voice that cannot be silenced. When you love yourself without guilt, without fear, without apology, that's when real love finds you. Not the conditional kind, the unconditional kind, the kind that sees you whole and chooses you every damn day. Number 5. Don't explain your worth. Walk in it. Exhaustion isn't always about muscles or sleep. Sometimes it's the soul snapping under the weight of proving itself again and again, wearing down from endless battles just to be seen, to be valued, to be understood. There's a brutal kind of fatigue that comes from explaining your worth to people who only want to harvest what benefits them, who reduce your entire existence to what you can give them, never what you are. That exhaustion is the birth of rebellion. The moment you say, enough. Enough begging. Enough justifying. Enough handing over your heart with receipts attached, hoping they'll read it right. That's when you stop chasing approval and start moving like a shadow, silent, fierce, untouchable. No more pouring out your soul like it's free candy on a street corner. No more over-explaining every move, every intention, like you're auditioning for a role only they get to decide if you deserve. No more bargaining for recognition that was never going to come. Because here's the brutal truth. Your worth is not negotiable. It is not a story to be debated or dissected. It's a fortress built from every scar, every fight, every time you rose when the world wanted you down. Seneca hammered it in. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. You've been hammered on the anvil of pain and emerged sharper, flashing light in a world eager to cast shadows. That proof is your armor, louder than any word you could shout into the void. Trying to convince someone of your worth is surrender masquerading as strength. It's handing your crown to those who never understood what royalty looks like, giving power to voices that have no right to hold it. That's not power, that's weakness disguised in desperation. So let them spin their lies, let them misunderstand, misjudge, and whisper stories they invent about who you are. Your battle isn't in convincing them, it's in standing so firmly in your own truth that silence roars. Silence becomes your rebellion. Silence becomes the firestorm that burns their false narratives to ash. This is the essence of Stoic power. Calm amid chaos, a mountain unmoved by the storms that rage around it. They hurl questions, doubts, and disrespect. You answer with absence, with a stillness so profound it unravels their attempts to shake you. They underestimate the quiet storm brewing beneath your calm. You rise, not to their expectations, but beyond their wildest nightmares. Your worth isn't shouted from rooftops. It's embodied in every step, every breath, every unshakable moment of peace you claim. Walk in your worth, like the world owes you nothing but respect. Don't explain it, be it. Live it so fiercely that your presence becomes the unspoken declaration in every room you enter. Let your peace be the thunder that drowns out their noise. Let your glow blind those who thought they could dim you. Because when you own your worth with relentless conviction, no one's approval is ever needed again. Love, attention, respect. None of it was ever yours to beg for. You weren't born to crawl on knees cracked and bleeding, desperate for scraps tossed by those who don't see your worth. No, you were forged to walk in it, stride with it blazing like a wildfire in your veins. To carry it in every breath, every step, every fierce glance that says, I am here, I am enough. It's sacred, fragile, but unbreakable if you guard it like your last breath. Life doesn't hand out mercy slips. It tests you with ruthless storms and savage nights where the world seems to rip your soul apart, piece by piece. People will come like vultures, trying to strip you bare, to make you doubt your own reflection. But here's the iron truth. The Stoics never folded. They stared down the chaos, bled under the pressure, and rose like gods from the ashes. You are no different. You've bled wounds no one saw, healed scars they'll never understand, and risen from every damn fall. Now, the time comes to stand taller than ever before. Not with noise or desperation, but with a quiet storm that commands respect without asking. Walk with the weight of your worth wrapped around you like armor. Love fiercely, deeply, but never, ever lose yourself in the fire, because your soul is your home. Protect it with savage love. If these words ignite something wild inside you, don't just scroll past. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Become the storm that shakes the world awake. Carry this fire with you, not just for today, but for every battle ahead. This is your uprising, your raw, relentless, unstoppable rise.